good morning, folks. And we are back at Infrastructure Matters. I'm supposed to know which recording this is, but we didn't check on that. So I'm not sure which one we are. Is it 43, 44, 45? It's one of those guys, but there we go. And I am with my best buds here. My partners in crime here, Steve Dickens and Krista Macomber. And we are on a roll because we've been rocking for the last 15 minutes and cracking jokes, but we won't share it.
We need the outtakes before the show starts. We'll get the producer to create a blooper reel because I think that would be funny.
Well, and
I think part of it is we are punchy. Go ahead, Krista.
I was going to say, it'd be another benefit, Stephen. I know you've been pushing to shift this to live, right? It could be the first 5 minutes is everyone would get to see the debacle that is us getting on the line and coordinating.
Yeah, there's oversharing.
3-second edit.
There's oversharing. Get us under control here, Camberley.
All right, here we go. Okay, so we've been on the road for like forever. And then also we had the 6.5 Summit this week, which was incredible. I don't know what the stats are and the numbers, but we'll post a link on that as well. But that had, I think, about 23 or 22 CEOs, 60-something sessions, covering everything from quantum to sustainability to whatever. So super stuff. Make sure you guys go watch the ones that are pertinent to you. But for today, we've got a bunch of events we've been to. We have been to Broadcom AR event, NetApp AR event, AWS Reinforce, Splunk. And then we've got some Oracle coverage. But anyway, that's what we have on tap today. And since I just said on tap, maybe we should start with NetApp's.
I see what you did there.
Woo, that was bad. That was bad. Maybe we should start with NetApp's. Oh, guys, would you take control of this, Steve? Because it's going downhill.
Camberley, tell us about NetApp's event.
Okay, I will. So we had 2 great days in New York City. They did, for the first time in 30 years, a closing of the New York Stock Exchange bell. That's the first time they've done this since the IPO, if you can imagine. So they were all down there. There's some great pictures that are popped up on LinkedIn. But that was a big celebration for them, especially coming on the backside of their earnings report, which was very good. Yep. And we've got a posting on that. But let me give you a couple things. George Kurian, if you don't know, is the twin brother of the other Kurian over at Google. But anyway, he kicked it off and really kicked it off. One of the biggest parts of this is kicking off some of their new positioning that they have, which is the intelligent data infrastructure. And that it may sound like a bunch of marketing stuff, but it's not. It's really pertaining to what they're doing and pertains of whether it's hybrid environment where they call it a unified storage, where unified is not just SAN and NAS. Unified is really being being first party, cloud provider, on-prem, any protocol. And really what they're talking about is a platform that manages across that. So you've got a single pane of glass that you're really working through everything from control, from your snapshots to your provisioning, et cetera. So there's a commonality in it. And then really focusing on a lot of the data services that they're delivering underneath there, which is, I think one of my buddies in the AR published, he goes, unfortunately, I can't talk about the really cool stuff because they have some really great development work that they're coming. And I would expect to see something this next year on what they're doing in the AI space that is really great in terms of the data, their adaptive data management capability. The other thing the other piece of it that really poked out at me was their strategy on SAN. So it's a couple of years ago, they announced just a sandbox, just a block box. They've always been known for file. They've been unified, block and file. And they launched this box that was just a block box. And we kind of went, why the heck are you doing that? And part of it is to really make a statement that we have a first-class citizen in the SAN environment. And why would you do that? Well, guess what? The block business is $49 billion market, is what they're expecting, and by 2027, and the file business is a $21 billion market. And so they're after that standalone block space and the standalone NAS space with their platform that has one management platform there, one set of policies, really great kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's just a little bit of what happened over the 2 days. And I'm sure that they're going to say, well, we talked about so much more, but those are the two biggie things that I took away from these
Is
guys.
there an AI component to that, Camberley, as part of the the overall story? Because I remember seeing a Vertex demo with NetApp, and from a file perspective, being able to present all of that file-based data to a large language model made a lot of sense to me.
Right. So and you've seen those demos. Hold that space, because that's what we're going to see really change for them in the future. And one of the advantages they have in that space is they are right now, they're the big file company. They have a huge amount of that, the world's data storage sitting on file across the world. And they've been servicing those markets, everything from the EDAs to the pharmaceuticals to the media and entertainment. And then what you're looking at doing is taking that file, which is what you want to provision, onto your data lakes or whatever you're going to do in terms of doing AI. And so that transition for the customer could be very, very smooth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm reading between the lines that you may or may not know something but can't say. Okay.
And I'll say one other thing, and that this could be a little glimpse to what's going on. They have a really good data classification capability that's part of their Blue XP.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
They don't charge for it anymore.
Interesting.
Yep. Was it 2 months ago? Was it 2 months ago that they opened it up for free? Krista, you were there.
That sounds correct. Yep, that sounds right to me.
They had an immediate uptick.
Yep.
So you've got clients flipping that switch, and they're going through and using this data classification on their current environment. Read between the lines.
Yes.
Interesting.
And kind of, I guess, building on that a little bit, I'd love to give a call out to the Data Services Division, our friend Gagan Galati. This is a somewhat new division to NetApp. I want to say it's been roughly 2 years or so since it was founded. And so really what they're doing is they're helping to drive the data services capabilities that NetApp is putting on top of, kind of the core infrastructure. So, as we're alluding to here, you can certainly think of some implications as we start to move towards AI applications. But really, we've also done a lot of work with this team, personally here at Futurum, which is really great around the cyber resiliency, side of things. So, the ability to be able to have not only sort of that, they describe it as sort of multi-pronged data protection. So the ability to have, snapshots, the ability to have capabilities like replication, for instance, but also they announced what they call, and this was before the summit, so I know, we certainly can talk about it. They've had available what they call their autonomous ransomware detection capability to really help customers to detect ransomware attacks sooner than they would be able to if we were kind of just looking, offline at kind of your secondary storage environment. So again, certainly some exciting announcements to come from that division. But it's been interesting to kind of track over the last couple of years, really just, I would say, kind of the ongoing maturity of kind of the message around this story, and just kind of how the capabilities continue to evolve and really kind of pinpoint what were some of these key, priorities that we're seeing in the market, like cybersecurity, AI, things of that nature.
Well, and then I'll say this one thing, and then we'll get off this topic and go to the next one. But on that detection, 99% to 99% detection accuracy on primary storage. And what happens, and this has been validated by a firm out of the SC, is that what they're called?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, this has been validated and confirmed and published on like this week. Because what it enables you to do, because it's automated and because its accuracy is so high, it immediately takes a snap.
Yep.
There's no human intervention. I'm taking a snap.
Yep.
So I'm in, you're talking seconds here, as opposed to the human intervention, which is going to be, 30 seconds, a minute or something like that.
Well, yes. Yep. So it's the automated action, as you mentioned, right, to be able to respond more quickly. But also, Kimberly, thank you for bringing up that point, because it's very important. both IT and security teams are dealing with so much alert fatigue that when they actually get an alert, especially when we think about something like anomalous activity, that it may or may not be malicious, you want to know, right? You want to know that this is something that is indeed malicious activity, that it is indeed something that is impacting data that you care about, kind of your crown jewels of your organization. So that's why that piece is very relevant there, because it really helps to kind of, identify potentially the needle in the haystack.
So I'm going to move it over to Steve. We were both at Broadcom Mainframe's conference with Greg Lotko and team. I know we got a research note that got published on it, but why don't you give us some highlights there, Steve?
Yeah, so we were out with Greg Lotko. Greg works for Hocktan. He runs the mainframe software business. That was what was...
I thought the mainframe was dead.
I may have heard that. I think I heard that 10 years ago.
I think I've been hearing it for the last 20, but yeah.
Right?
Flourishing part of the business. I think you give me a nice setup there, Camberley. I know you're poking me, but you give me a nice setup. I think lots of discussion around other parts of Broadcom's software business. Let's just leave it at that. An investment, narratives around, are they going to squeeze the juice out of these software acquisitions? I think very, very firmly came away from Greg and his team. He had 30 of his team there, that since that team's been bought, 6 years ago now, that they have heavily invested. Size of the team's up 30%, new software feature functions coming out from that team, also a model of where they're really focused on delivering value rather than looking at some of the contractual stuff. So new functionality like Watchtower, extended storage into their CA1 products, a real focus into skills and vitality of the workforce, and a really innovative program around where they'll take somebody through a training program at their own cost and then put that person into their customers to help with some of the skills challenges. So, and they're not charging for that. So a real focus on sort of adding value into their sort of very targeted, base of clients, trying to get really strategic relationships with them and drive adoption, drive value add into that software stack, rather than trying to grow their client base or go and bring new features out and charge for them. They're really looking at how do we bring more feature function into the installed base of customers. So I came away from that. I mean, I know a lot of that story, but really good to get that reinforced. I mean, Camberley, we collaborated on a research note. Is there anything that you would add to that?
Well, the first part of the research note, I more or less talked about what I would think is the impressions of where they were at. And that key impression that I had is every one of them, organically was talking about, well, this is, we're looking at what the customer has to say. We're looking at what the customer has to say. And, it is somewhat of a closed community, if you will, or, there's only so many mainframes that are out there. And we're not like we're growing number of mainframes by 30% new customers or anything like that. But they are the industry, the amount of MIPS that are out there and consumption of it is growing. So it's gotten, it's very important in those environments. And because of the entire group being aging, what, the organizations are doing in order to drive skills, both from an AI standpoint, capability, as well as this Vitality program, which I thought was really cool. The other thing that I took from the Vitality is they're going after looking at people that are the non-standard college comp sci graduates. They're looking for people, and this is my advertisement to anybody listening here, which you're probably not. You're probably a comp sci if you're listening to it. You're probably not a card dealer in Vegas. You're probably, what they're looking for is people that can think through problems, challenge the problems, and work through it. I mean, a card dealer would be fabulous for this because you're reading people, you're reading whatever, and you're doing whatever. You're not counting cards, but you're not supposed to count cards. But anyway, so I mean those, and so when they had, I guess it was at Share where they had the Vitality people up on chair. It was this huge diversity of people, and not diversity in terms of gender or color, but diversity of life. And so, which I thought was,
I think
really, really
the
cool.
other thing I would say is they're not, these jobs are, once you've gone through this program, these are six-figure salary jobs that
Mhm.
you're getting. These are,
So,
COBOL programmers for Citibank, system programmers for Wells Fargo. These are like big government agencies and enterprise accounts that have got an absolute need and are prepared to pay six-figure salaries for somebody who's got 1 year's experience.
Mhm.
And because Broadcom will put you through this training program, after a year, you'll come out with all the right skills and background, and then you're straight into working for some of the biggest names and biggest companies in the industry. So, really impressive program.
yeah, very much so.
Mhm.
All righty. So let's go on to the next one. How about AWS Reinforce?
Yeah.
What is Reinforce? Obviously, it's data protection or security. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there. But
Correct. Yep. Yeah. So Reinforce is AWS, their annual security conference. So this was the second year that I had the opportunity to attend. I was able to attend. What they had for the analysts was the first day was basically partner day, which was really great because we were able to hear how NetApp is not only working with partners to sort of kind of
NetApp, you mean
provide.
AWS?
Yes.
AWS is working.
All right, we'll go.
Start
I'm
over.
still on NetApp. Yeah,
It's the end of the week, Krista. We're all
it
a bit
is.
fuzzled, so you're okay.
It is. Yeah, so Reinforce is AWS, their annual security conference. This is the second year that I had the opportunity to attend. And what they had for the analysts was the first day at Reinforce this year was Partner Day. So that was interesting because we were able to hear how AWS is working with their partners, not only to sort of round out their capabilities, but also how they're kind of integrating their partners' capabilities into Marketplace to kind of make them accessible for customers. So we got to hear from a range of kind of partners, including CyberArk is one that I kind of got the chance to sit down and chat a little bit with. And then, so the second day was the general session, and we were able to hear from their CISO, Chris Betts. And what I would say is, from my perspective, what was interesting was there were still from AWS kind of some underpinnings around. They like to talk about, kind of not all clouds are built the same, right? So certainly AWS, they make sure to showcase at Reinforce the investments that AWS is making in their own security of their own infrastructure that they're using, obviously, to host for customers, but also the tools and capabilities that they're providing for customers to use to kind of add, their additional security capabilities on top with that shared responsibility model. That was a big emphasis last year, and certainly they touched on that this year. But the conversation from my perspective this year was kind of even more sophisticated, right? Which I think kind of shows where we're at when we think about cloud security. I think, especially with all of the cyber attacks, there's certainly an understanding that the customer not only needs to be discerning about, which service providers and technology providers that they're working with, but also that they have to kind of take ownership over their own security. So for me, it kind of showed that I think we've had that kind of maturity and evolution. And then at the keynote, we were able to kind of double click down and talk about things like, okay, how is AWS, for example, helping customers to, act more quickly and more decisively, for example, when an attack occurs. Towards the end of the keynote, they talked about, kind of generative AI and how they're, kind of helping to, kind of provide secure models and kind of things of that nature.
And so, what else you got? You said something. You said something interesting about a dinner of some sort that you attended.
Yeah, so we did have, typically they do have kind of an analyst dinner, but what was interesting this year was we were able to hear from Paul Vixie, who my understanding is a bit of a celebrity when it comes to security, and in particular open source security. He was really a pioneer in DNS, is my understanding of his history. And he gave this really interesting, maybe 15-minute, kind of talk. And then we had a Q&A around restoring security to pre-internet levels. And especially coming from a company like AWS, I thought that was very interesting because obviously their whole business is based on, basically using the internet and connectivity to deliver services and things of that nature. So, kind of some of my key takeaways were, certainly we need to be able to continue to evolve our technology implementations to be, designed to have security baked in upfront and kind of really intrinsically. But also as humans, we need to sort of, shift our mindset and our approach and, really kind of become educated on how we're using these technologies in order to kind of avoid some of these cyber attacks. So I did want to give a call out to that because I thought it was just a really interesting topic, again, especially coming from AWS.
Very interesting. Okay, cool. So we've got a couple of others. Steve, you were at Splunk's conference this last week?
Yeah, sort of.
Thinking of security.
Yeah. So big sort of news from Splunk. They obviously got acquired by Cisco. That closed about 10 or 11 weeks ago. We covered this, Paul Nashwadi and I, this week. I think because he was out at Cisco Live, which was the week before. So they kind of rolling thundered some of their announcements, sort of announced some stuff at Cisco Live and then drilled into it. There was a really interesting bromance that's developing by Gary Steele, the former CEO of Splunk, now president of go-to-market for the whole of Cisco. He invited Chuck Robbins onto the stage, the CEO of Cisco, and it was really obvious to everybody, and we all talked about it, how much the chemistry was between those two. And they kind of strayed off the scripted remarks, and it was really interesting. I don't know whether it was Chuck just being a better actor than I'm giving him credit for, or whether they genuinely strayed off this kind of script. But he said, it's come across loud and clear that our job here is not to mess up Splunk. And the entire audience of the keynote, rapturous applause, and he had to stop his talk track because everybody just clapped, and he's like, "Oh, okay, that's what you want me to do."
Loud and clear. We're going to give you a standing
right?
So then he came into the sort of analyst session and restated that we had Gary and Chuck kind of join us and spend an hour with us. And it's really obvious. And Gary made this point. There's been one personnel change in the 8,000 people for Splunk. And that's been him. Everybody else is exactly the same. They've not, and they were very, very clear because the whole mantra of their talk track was innovation and integration. And the question I asked Gary was, well, that means you're asking your development teams to do two things. And he's like, yes. I said, well, you can't ask them, because previously they were just on innovation. They weren't focused on integration with Thousand Eyes and app dynamics. And he said, yes, this is not your standard acquisition where we're looking for cost synergies. We've actually based into our SEC filings and our earnings statements that we're going to add resources to R&D to do both integration and innovation. So really sort of unusual talk track. Normally from an acquisition, it's like, hey, we're going to buy this thing, we're going to strip cost out of it, we're going to integrate its tools into our tools. And what they were very clear to say is that when that happens, innovation gets put on pause because they spend 2 years doing the integration. They were very explicit, so there was a lot of new feature function. There was a lot about AI and embedding that into the sort of observability piece. There was as much innovation And then there was the integration with Thousand Eyes and App Dynamics. So genuinely believe that I think they're looking at some other big acquisitions that are happening in the industry, and they did mention names, but I won't mention them here. And they're being very thoughtful to make this a big sort of strategic play of they want the Splunk acquisition to work. The sort of feedback that we as an analyst community is that Cisco's made a lot of software acquisitions and they've not moved Cisco from being a hardware company. This one feels and is different given the scale of it. So really impressed with some of the stuff they're doing around AI. Came away really impressed with the integration with App Dynamics and Thousand Eyes. So the ability to do 3-tier application observability, network observability, and now the hybrid and multi-cloud stuff. That gives them a breadth of portfolio in the observability space that I'm certainly impressed with, and gives them a really competitive position.
It's kind of interesting thinking about that we're getting to watch this integration as analysts. So you've got Splunk going on. We have the VMware. Many years ago it was Red Hat, but that still is, still is a separate company. You've got HashiCorp going on, and then you've got HPE's network acquisition that they're doing. So all very big, very, very big. So we kind of like putting them side by side to see what it goes. So,
well, yeah, we get a front row seat for these.
Yep.
We get to ask these senior execs what they're doing, and you can, we're going to be out at VMware Explore. I'm at HPE Discover next week, where there'll be a lot of Juniper stuff. I know the actual integration exec who's doing the HashiCorp integration at IBM. He's a friend of mine. Shout out to Taran Chopra. He's going to hate that I mentioned him here, but he's, so we get to front row seat to these to see how these integrations are happening, and you can kind of scorecard them as an analyst and see how they're rolling.
Oh, and then we got Cohesity going with Veritas, which is okay. There we got another one happening. So we got one more topic. So you want to touch on Oracle?
So
stuff that we're looking at, the Google thing.
Yeah, so I mean, they multi-cloud partnership with Google Cloud, interesting.
Very
also, OpenAI selecting Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. I think I was on the TV networks talking about Oracle ahead of earnings on Schwab. I think the way I'm looking at this now with OCI is they're becoming the fourth hyperscaler. So, the narrative is that there's the big three. I genuinely think these guys are up at over 20 billion now of annual revenue for cloud. The centricity of data and their Oracle 23 AI database, the ability to do vector, embedded into that database. I see a confluence of events coming together. I think they've doubled down on OCI. I think some of these partnerships are starting to sort of make sense. They're really going after IaaS, and that's starting to come through with the OpenAI piece. I genuinely think Oracle's on a tear with its cloud business, and then you couple it with the franchise they've got around database. I see you not as convinced, Camberley.
Well, no, I would agree that they would be the fourth folks after Alibaba, but
yeah, I mean that's a regional play.
But what I saw about this, and I didn't dive into it like you have, but what I saw about this is that they are seeing themselves as which they've been, as a platform, and they're going to integrate themselves as a platform into every one of these infrastructure providers, which is basically what Google and AWS and Microsoft are doing in terms of their clouds. So there's what I read from that is I don't have to be the infrastructure provider. He is Ellison has always been that incredible high-end software provider, and they are going to stick to their knitting.
Well, I think they've got a really good story with this at customer and at cloud piece. So for me, there's huge install base of Oracle database in the enterprise. That stuff needs to be presented and pushed out to these newer AI-driven applications. I think the other cloud providers are going, do you want to move the AI to the data or the data to the AI?
And if you remember early on with AWS's, it was all about the evil bread. They'd get on the stage and they never say the Oracle word, but it was all over the place as if, they are so much after these guys to take them down, to help people get off of it. And it's kind of like, getting off a database is not exactly an easy thing to do.
Well, I think people are realizing
so he's basically saying, I'm going to own this, and I don't care where, I'm going to own this.
Well, I think people are realizing that, we're going to see a tsunami of AI apps come over the next 2-3 years, and it moving your data to go to the AI platform, too hard, too difficult, too much egress charges. Be able to put the AI close to the data makes a lot more sense. And I think the hyperscalers and, the deal they did with OpenAI, the deal they've penned with Google Cloud is an acknowledgement of this, of Oracle's where a lot of that enterprise data sits. I need to put an AI front end to it. We were just having the same conversation around NetApp. That's the same thought process. Are you going to take it all off NetApp and put it into the cloud to put it on an AI's? No, you're not. The egress charges, the operational, the cyber resilience, the
privacy,
you're going to bring that. Yeah. All those reasons are the same reason we're seeing Oracle make such strides, the same as the NetApp piece. For me, you're going to bring that AI to the data. And then if you look at that and go, if data's that sort of central component of an AI strategy, who's got most of the data in enterprise databases? It's Oracle. Therefore, you need to form a partnership and an alliance with Oracle. You bring in what they're doing with sovereign cloud. You bring in what they're doing with hybrid, with Alloy, and some of Exadata cloud at customer. The pieces join up, and it makes a lot of sense for me. So I think that's why we're seeing people start to think around Oracle as that fourth hyperscaler.
Platform. Anyway.
Platform. Hyperscaler AI platform.
And like the car guys would say, you've wasted another half an hour with us.
This is the best part of my week.
It is.
So if you haven't listened to that, that's an old podcast from PBS. But anyway, so thank you very much for joining us in Infrastructure Matters. And this proves that infrastructure does matter, guys. And we will see you. Make sure you share, all that kind of stuff. And we'll see you next week.